Have you ever, just looked down at your own hands and for a split second they felt, well, not yours? We're about to dive into a tiny 5-line poem that captures that exact feeling and, believe it or not, turns it into something incredibly freeing. So, let's get right into it. It all starts with this really stark, kind of disorienting line from the poet Adelaide Crapsey. I know not these my hands. Just 5 words, and bam, our whole sense of self is fractured. It's that feeling of looking at your own body and seeing a total stranger. And right there, that's the big question we're tackling in this explainer. I mean, we usually think of that kind of detachment as something scary, right? A sign that something's wrong. But what if it's the exact opposite? What if it's actually the key to a much deeper kind of freedom? Okay, so to really get our heads around this pretty wild idea, we have to go back in time. We need to meet the woman who wrote these words from her sickbed, looking out at the world through a very, very different lens. So this is a quick look at Adelaide Crapsey's last few years. She was a brilliant woman, educated at Vassar, but her body was failing her. Her mind, though, it was as sharp as ever. Just imagine, you're trapped in one of these cure cottages, your entire world shrinking down to one room, and in that tiny space, you create something this powerful. And get this, this is where her reality just hits you. The only thing she could see from her window was a cemetery. I mean, every single day, she was literally face to face with death. But instead of just horror, she found this strange sense of wonder in her own detachment, this quiet astonishment at watching her own life fade. But here's the thing. Crapsey didn't just, write about what she was feeling. She actually built a container for it. She engineered a whole new poetic form, and its very structure is the blueprint for understanding what was going on in her mind. And she called it the American Cinquain. Now, she was inspired by these really precise Japanese forms, like tanka. So it's not about rhyme or anything like that. It's all about a very strict syllable count. Every single line is meticulously crafted. And that precision, well, that's the key. So the structure, it's like this pyramid of sound. 2 syllables, then 4, 6, 8, and then it just collapses back to 2. Seriously, if you read it out loud, you can actually feel it in your own body. It's the rhythm of someone struggling to breathe. A short little inhale, a long, drawn-out exhale, and then that final, quiet release. So think about it. The form itself becomes this kind of anchor. It takes the absolute chaos of your identity dissolving and gives it a steady, predictable rhythm. It's like finding a handhold in a storm, a way to find calm right in the middle of that vertigo. It's a container for the uncontainable. Right, so we have the form, the container, but what's actually happening inside that container? What's going on in our brains when we experience this feeling of estrangement? For that, we got to turn to a little psychology and neuroscience. When you read this poem, something pretty incredible happens in your brain. That little circuit that goes, hey, that's me, it starts to flicker. Your inner monologue, that constant chatterbox in your head, it actually quiets down. And your brain's alarm system, the amygdala, it doesn't freak out. It goes quiet. And you get this little hit of dopamine, a reward for this moment of clear-eyed acceptance. And if you look at this through a psychological lens, it's like the famous mirror stage, but completely flipped on its head. A toddler sees themselves in a mirror for the first time and thinks, aha, that's me, and creates this solid sense of self. Well, Crabsey's poem shatters that mirror. The adult looks at their own body and thinks, wait, that's not me. And that solid sense of self just starts to crack. And the crazy part is, the poem doesn't try to fight this feeling of being broken up. Nope. It just leans right into it. It's that moment where your mind looks down at your body and goes, you and me, we're not the same anymore. And in that moment, there's this acceptance that you aren't really the person who used to live inside this body. Okay, so this poem is over 100 years old, right? Written way before modern medicine. But that core feeling of being a stranger in your own body, that's something a lot of us can connect with today for totally different reasons. I mean, just look at this comparison. Crapsey's slow decline from tuberculosis feels like a mirror for so many modern struggles. Think about the brain fog and dissociation that comes with long COVID, or the deep, deep isolation of chronic illness, or even just that feeling that your body has become this collection of medical data points, something you manage instead of live in. And this is where the poem's power just explodes today. It's this quiet act of rebellion. It kind of frees us from this idea that we have to be in complete control of our bodies all the time. It pushes back against all that modern pressure to conquer every illness, to optimize our health, to completely own our own flesh. So the poem is pushing this really radical shift in how we see ourselves. You're not the possessor of your body anymore. Instead, you become something like an archivist of its memory. You're curating the story of the person who used to live there, the woman who once had hands just like these. Okay, so all of this, it's leading us to the most powerful and honestly, the most surprising interpretation of this entire poem. This is where we uncover its true, liberating message. At first glance, it feels like a really sad poem, doesn't it? A lament for a body, a self that's being lost to illness. But what if that's not the whole story? What if we've been reading it all wrong and it's something else entirely? So let's just reframe this for a second. Is this poem an elegy? A sad poem mourning what's gone? Or could it actually be a manifesto, a declaration of a whole new way of being? And this is the final twist. That line, "I know not these my hands," it's not about confusion. It's not about loss. It's about liberation. It's the exact moment she sees through the illusion that she ever really owned her body in the first place. The truly radical takeaway here is that the self is just a temporary tenant. Illness and death don't actually take something away from us. They just reveal a truth that was there all along. We were never really the owners. And accepting that, well, it isn't terrifying, it's freeing. And so we're left with the poem's final, haunting lines. There's no panic here. There's no despair. It's just a quiet, distant memory, a peaceful acknowledgement of a life that once lived in this body, a final, astonishing release. And it leaves us with this profound question. What if the ultimate freedom isn't found in holding on tighter, but in having the courage to finally, peacefully, just let go?